Mazel tov, mazel tov. I feel terrible this morning. We were so excited. Just everyone was so overwhelmed with the simcha that we unfortunately forgot to tape my speech. So therefore, for Bubby, for Sab and Saft, and anyone else who wasn't able to be there, this is for you. I would like to repeat the speech here, and you can have it. And not only that, if it's boring, you could skip it. You could fast forward, or you could replay it if you like it. So here it goes. I'm going to try to do a reenactment of what I did this morning, and you're part of our simcha. So this morning we named our son Avraham Nosson. Avraham is after my grandfather Zeidy Reuben, who I knew for the first 14 or so years of my life. Zeidy was always there. Every Shabbos I would daven by his side, especially Rosh Hashanah and Kippur when Abba was away davening in Wilkes-Barre. I would always have the privilege of davening next to Zeidy, and there's an indelible impression that he left on me as a child. He was a figure of Torah, figure of humility, and I learned so much from him. It's interesting. He was born on he was Nifter. His yahrzeit was on Chaf Aleph Sivan last week, and our son Avraham Nosson was born on Chaf Beis Sivan. So it's very apropos that our son bears the name Avraham. Nosson is named after Zeidy Weissman, whose name was Moshe Nosson. Baruch Hashem, Saba is alive and well. I may have asked from Shana and living in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore we're not able to name our child Moshe, but Nosson is a very nice fit with Avraham. And Zeidy Weissman was a man who loved his family. He was really just a man on a mission. He loved every minute of life, always ready to get up, didn't miss davening, shachris, mincha, marav, every bris, every simcha, do the daf, always ahead in the daf. And Zeidy was larger than life. And it's still a shock that he's not with us anymore. What a love he had for his family, for his children, and it's a nechama for us to be able to name our child Nosson for Zeidy Weissman. What's also interesting is that on Chav Gimel Sivan, which is my birthday, it's also the yahrzeit of Saba's father, Shmuel Zanvil. And if you look in the Beis Shmuel, I just discovered this. The Beis Shmuel was written about 400 years ago in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Gittin, where he goes through many of the different names that we have in Judaism. And there he writes that Zanvil is a nickname, number one for Shmuel, but it's also a nickname for Nosson. Zanvil is a nickname for Nosson. So we feel very connected also to Shmuel Zanvil. His yahrzeit was just the next day after Avraham Nosson was born. Of course, who's not here, Zeidy Krigsman, David, who unfortunately I will never be able to name a child after, as I share the same name. But Zeidy is here with, sharing in our simcha today. How proud Zeidy would be, and he is. Like the Beis Yosef writes in Hilchos Milah, b'shem the Ritva, the neshamas of the grandparents come to the simcha. And Zeidy for sure was here in Yisrael, a place that he loved to frequent, a place that he loved to spend time with the Talmidei Chachamim, with the Rebbeim, and it's a nechama being able to have Avraham Nosson's bris here in yeshiva. Also realizing that Zeidy is smiling in Shemayim, seeing his Einokol have a bris milah here in the yeshiva. Okay, so the minhag in yeshiva is that by a bris, usually the father of the child will say over a shtickle Torah a discourse in something, and the topic that he's learning doesn't have to be relevant to the bris milah. However, if you'd ask me what I'm learning lots of different things with different people. My schedule's quite eclectic. But I would like to share something very special, a shtickle Torah that I learned, that I worked on 4 years ago, just a little more than 4 years ago. It was in Adar Tavshin Ayin Zayin, 2017 in March, we were learning ribis, ezahu neshach, very difficult parak, the laws of interest. Now in our kollel, every Thursday we would rotate. Everyone would prepare a shir on the topic that we would be learning, and it was an exercise for the each individual to prepare some a chiddush, something that is of content, serious content. And it was my turn. It was going to be the last Chaburah of the Zman before Pesach. Last time we would be learning Ezu Neshech in the morning. And I prepared it. I prepared a whole shtickle. The previous Matzah Shabbos, I was so proud I had it already. It was on the topic of Ashtar Shakasav by Ribis. And really this is a Chaburah that develops into a story that inspired me then and inspires me till today. And I hope it will inspire you too. The Gemara talks about a machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim about if you have a contract that has interest in it. And we know there's a prohibition in the Torah. One is not allowed to charge his fellow Jew interest for a loan. But let's say someone did. He violated this Isser, and he has a contract that has ribis in it, and now he wants to know, can he collect his money, collect his debt using this shtar? So Rabbi Meir says, we fine the person. There's a knas, and we tell him, we apologize, but you're not allowed to collect your debt at all, because if the lover wants to give it to you, he wants to be a nice man and give you back your money, not without the ribis obviously, but he wants to pay you back the principal, he could do that. But you cannot take him to court, says Rabbi Meir, at all, and charge him even for the principal. You're lost. You lost it. You shouldn't have added interest into your contract. The Chachamim are a little bit more apologetic, and they say that no, you obviously cannot collect the ribis, but you can collect the bikeren, you can collect the principal. If you lent them $100,000, you can collect your $100,000. So the Rishonim are all bothered. They ask, how could you collect anything with this contract? This contract is completely invalid. This contract was signed by witnesses who are committing a violation as we speak. The Torah says, Lo yisasimun alav neshach. One is not allowed to place interest on his friend. The Gemara learns on Daf Ayin Hey Amud Beis there in Ezu Neshach that not only is this prohibition applicable to the lender and the borrower, it is also applicable to the Edom. It's also applicable to the scribe, the Sefer who's writing up the contract. Anyone who's associated with this contract is in violation of this prohibition of Lo Yisasimun alav neshach. So asks Tosfos and the Ramban and others, how could this contract be kosher if the witnesses are now Rishayim? They're violating a lav. And any witness who's a Rasha is not an appropriate witness. He's puzzle. He's puzzle edus. So this contract, you can throw it out the window, throw it in the garbage. It's worthless. So there are numerous answers given, and I won't go into them now. I just want to focus on one of them. And that is the answer of the Ketzos HaChoshen. The Ketzos in Siman Nun Beis takes a new approach. I had this approach, and I was initially worried to say something against the Rishonim, but I found it in the Ketzos, which was very exciting. The Ketzos says is that we know there's a Mishnah in Chulin, which states that if someone, chas v'shalom, shechts an animal on Shabbos, so that even though he obviously did a big aveira, he should not kill an animal on Shabbos, the animal's still kosher. You can eat that animal. Maybe not on Shabbos, it's machlokes in the Gemara, but certainly the rest of the week later, you'd be allowed to eat that animal. So Tosfos asks, how could you eat the animal? We know there's a halacha that a mumer l'chalal Shabbos, someone who desecrates Shabbos, cannot be a shochet. His shchita is puzzled. It's as if a non-Jew shechted the animal. So here you have, Pinchas, he decides he wants to shecht an animal on Shabbos. He's a mechalal Shabbos. He's not allowed to kill this animal. So how could the Mishnah state that you're allowed to eat the animal if the one who shechted the animal is a mummer l'chalal Shabbos? He's invalid to shecht. So Tosfos says that he only becomes a mummer once the shechita is completed. As long as he's still there, sawing at the animal, so then he's not in violation of a lav d'araisa. He may be violating a issur d'rabbanan of mekalkel b'chaburah, but he does not officially kill the animal until he's done his shechita, and therefore the mummer status only kicks in once he's finished with the shechita. So says the Ketzais here too, we could say the same type of logic. These witnesses, granted, they are violating an isser of lois siman alav nashach, but that only kicks in once they finish signing the contract. So if they finish signing until they finish signing the contract, they're kosher edim, and therefore says the Ketzais, they are entitled to this contract is a kosher contract, and the malva is entitled to collect his debt using this contract. Okay, the Nesivus, the contemporary colleague of the Ketzais, didn't like this answer at all. He has a few questions. One of his questions that we'll focus on is as follows. The Rif writes that Eidos testimony is only kicks in once let's talk about the Gemara Ksubis and Dafir Chesem Beis Nechkre Eidusan. What testimony only has it's secured, it's considered valid testimony that the Bezdin recognizes once a shtar, the contract that was signed by the witnesses, is handed over to one of the participants, one of the litigants, because that means that now they're finished with their job, they're done their Eidus. Bezdin can now be rest assured there was appropriate testimony. It's over. Why that is, the Nesivus explains, is because there's Eidei Chasima. These are the Eidim who are signing on the shtar. And then there's Eidei Mesira. And Eidei Mesira are people who are standing by watching that shtar be given over to the Baldin. The Ran explains, says the Nesivus, that even if there's no one really present by the Eidei Mesira, those Eidei Chasima, those people who signed on the shtar, those witnesses, they are acting as the Eidei Mesira as well, because once we know, it's almost like Anan Sahadi, we know that this contract was written, was signed by those people. Look, whose hands it's in? It's in one of the litigants' hands. So now, and once it gets into their hands, those people's signatures are kind of like going along throughout the process, and therefore, since they are needed all the way until the end, until the contract's handed over to the Baldin, so then even if, yes, the Psul Eidos kicks in only after they finish signing the ink, signing the dotted line, they drop the pen, says the Nesivus, I agree, Ketzais, maybe only then they become possible, but guess what, we still need those Eidim. Those Eidim cannot say, all right, we're going home, let's go have a beer. No, they are still acting as the Eidei Mesira. They're still needed until the contract lands in the hands of the Baldin. Therefore, argues the Nesivus, now they're puzzle. They're puzzle as Eidei Mesira. We don't have kosher Eidei Mesira because they've already violated the love. And therefore, the Nesivus blibes schwer, as they say. He doesn't have an answer, and he disagrees with this approach of the Ketzais. Okay, this was the Chaburah that I had prepared. Obviously, I cut out a lot of it here, but this is why I prepared that Motzei Shabbos. Following Wednesday, we were running out of time. My Chaburah and I noticed we still had more material to cover, and we wanted to finish it before Pesach. So I turned to my Chaburah at the end of Seder Wednesday morning. I said, maybe tomorrow I'm just going to skip this Chaburah. I did my homework. The exercise was done. It was good for me. But why does everyone here have to listen to it? I think what we can gain more by learning on our own, rather than me taking up other people's time to say over my Chaburah, my shir. My Chaburah shrugged the shoulders and said, yeah, maybe we should do that. Well, HaKadosh Baruch had different plans. That night, I came home after night Seder, and I was exhausted, but Esther needed help preparing her shir, for class the next day on a difficult Ramban and Parshas Bereshis. I remember sitting there on the couch, trying to help her out, exhausted, and I looked up at my Svarim Shag, and I see a set of Svarim, 5 volumes, called the Tabas HaChoshen. Tabas HaChoshen was written by Rav Scheinberg. Why did I have those Svarim? So, the story goes like this. The previous summer, in 2016, I went to visit my great uncle, Uncle Chaim Rubin, who was living in Crown Heights. He was the youngest brother of my Zeidy. And I wanted to speak to him about his life, about the life of my grandfather. I was only 14 when he died. I wanted a little more of a mature perspective of the life that he lived, growing up. I want to hear about my great-grandparents. And it was really an amazing 2 hours spent with him. In the middle of that conversation, he turns to me and he says, your grandfather was very close to Rav Scheinberg. So I said, of course I know that. I'll never forget when Rav Scheinberg came to the hospital to Baycrest in Toronto to visit my Zeidy. On one of his trips to Toronto, seeing a 95-year-old Rebbe walk in, this talis and tefillin, to visit his sick Talmud, grandfather's bearing his head in his hands, crying and incessantly. Just, it was so emotional, so meaningful. Of course I knew that Zeidy was very close to Rav Scheinberg. Now that I'm actually giving this shir in this room, you get something extra. Here we have the Shtar Smicha that my Zeidy got, signed by Rav Scheinberg, Yeridea, and Choshe Mishpat, when he learned 8 years there in Yeshivas Chavetz Chaim in Williamsburg. Of course, I knew he was very close to Rav Scheinberg. But Uncle Chaim added something that I did not know. And he said, do you know that Rav Scheinberg quotes your grandfather in his Sefer Tabas HaChoshen? That I never knew. Zeidy never told me that. I didn't know what a Tabas HaChoshen was when I was 14. He said, yeah, it's in there. I said, do you know where it is? No, I don't know where it is. Baruch Hashem, I just went on HebrewBooks.org, pulled up Tabas HaChoshen, and in the first volume, I typed in Avraham Reuben, and out popped the page of Avraham Reuben. I'm like, there it is. I quickly sent out the link to all the family, and it was something just to admire. It was very exciting to find. Okay, fast forward a few months after Sukkot, I received my smicha from the Yisrael, finished my tests, and Bobby Reuben and Sheindy so nicely decided that they wanted to buy me as a present the Tabas HaChoshen, the Rav Scheinberg Sefer, which was very exciting for me. Problem was is that they couldn't get it to Baltimore. They needed someone who wasn't flying. It was a heavy set of Sfarim. So Sachi and Shira finally came for Purim, time in March, and they delivered my Sfarim. So there I was sitting on the couch helping Esther figure out an Ramban, and I noticed these new Sfarim sitting on my shelf, and it occurred to me, hey, maybe Rav Scheinberg talks about this Kitzos and this Ivis that I wrote a Chaburah on. Maybe I wouldn't give it the next day, but hey, maybe there might be something interesting in there. So I take it off the shelf, and I see, sure enough, on that topic, he has quite a bit. Too tired to do it. I said, I'll bring it to Yeshiva with me the next day. Okay, I get to Yeshiva the next day, and usually my Chavrusa, Moshe Hirsch, it's always one of the first ones there in the base medrash. And I probably wouldn't have had time to read Tabas HaChoshen. Maybe I would read it in my lunch break. But that day, he came late for some reason. I don't remember. So I had time. I started going through it. And it was great. It was literally on target. He's dealing with the questions I wanted to deal with. He got into the Ketzais. He dealt with the Ketzais. And then he gets into the Nesivos. And I said, oh, wait a second. Now he's got a kasha. He's got a good question on the Nesivos. The question went like this. Very nice Nesivos. You're telling me that the Eidim become puzzle and we need them further along, the conveyor belt until the contract lands in the hands of the litigant? If that's the case, as it was written in Tabas HaChoshen, then there really is no problem at all. Because until that contract lands in the hands of the litigant, the witnesses have not violated the prohibition of Lo Sasimin Alav Neshech. That shtar, this contract, is meaningless until it lands in the hands of the Malva and the Loiva. So how can you have a complaint, an argument against the Ketzos that, you see, we need these witnesses all until the very end, and right when they finish signing the dotted line, they have violated the prohibition of Lo Sasim Lav Neshech? That's just not true. They have not violated the law until the contract lands in the hands of the Malva or the Loiva, because it's not Nechkara Edusan. The Bezdin has not given their official stamp on this testimony. So their testimony is worthless. It's meaningless. Has no value. And therefore, if it has no value, they're not in violation of Lo Sasim Lav Neshech just yet. And therefore, they only violate it once it lands in the hands. And therefore, there are kosher Eidei Chasima and Eidei Mesira. Because they only become puzzle when the logic in the world of the Ketzos only after the deed is done. And that is already too late. We already have our kosher edus, and therefore there's no reason you can't use the contract. Great question. Like, wow, this is a great addition to my Chaburah. And then I continued reading, and it says as follows. Koi heyer yedidi harav Avraham Reuben. This was the question of my dear friend Avraham Reuben. Be'eis shalamanu ha'k'tzois kan. When we learnt the k'tzois together, this was the question of my Zeidy. I had the goosebumps. I had never bothered to look at what my Zeidy had asked, what he was talking, why he was cited in the Sefer. And here I realized my Zeidy must be sitting right next to me in yeshiva. Look what HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated. Do you know how many? There's 5 volumes of this. There's 400 pages in each volume. There's 25,000 Tosfos in Shas. Happened to be my week to give the Chaburah. Happened to be I decided to pick that one line in Tosfos to discuss. Happened to be I was mechavan to the Ketzos and I found the teretz of the Ketzos and then I worked on the Ketzos and the Nesivos. Happened to be I visited my great uncle. Happened to be I got my smicha. Happened to be Zeidy and Bubby decided to buy me Tabas Choshen. Happened to be Sachi and Shir decided to come for Purim. Otherwise I wouldn't have the Sfarim in my house. I still would have been waiting for them. All these happens to be are obviously the Hashem. It was so invigorating, so inspiring to see how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is paying attention to every word of Torah that we're learning. He's listening. It says in the Navi, right? Vayakshev Hashem vayishma. Hashem's listening. He's listening to every single word that we're learning together in yeshiva. And Zeidy, who did Zeidy know 70, 80 years ago, that his grandson years later would be able to say over his Chaburah, say over that one question. This is the only Torah that we have from Zeidy. So it was very moving for me. And I turned to my Chaburah and I said, I think I'm saying Chaburah today. Needless to say, this was a very an inspiring story then, and it is today. My bracha to our child, Avraham Nosson, is that he should grow up to be a tremendous Talmid Chacham, a real Yarei Shamayim, someone who will be a light to the entire Jewish nation, someone who will be Marbitz Torah, Mekadashim Shamayim, together with the rest of our children, with the rest of Klal Yisrael. And may he be a Nechama to the entire family. In memory of Zeidy, Reuben, Avraham, in memory of Zeidy Weissman, Reb Nosson, bring Zeidy Kriegsman, Nechama, and Shamayim, and bring all of us simcha, true simcha, watching him grow, watching him be that light, be an inspiration to all of us. May we be zoche to see beautiful things from our Avraham Nosson and share in many more simchas together. Mazel tov.